Welcome, welcome to Bold Women Lawyers Spotlight Interview. I have an old friend. She's not old chronologically. We have just been friends for a very long time. Here today for our interview. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Sharon Christie, founder and CEO of Bold Women Lawyers, where I do business coaching for women lawyers in solo and small law firms. I am a lawyer myself. Was a partner in a small firm for many years and had my own solo practice for many years. And now I'm doing business coaching. And today we have Lori Villegas with us, who is a financial management wizard. Lori is Senior Vice President and Wealth Advisor with Morgan Stanley, where she's been advising clients for over 25 years. She specializes in working with business owners and executives, assisting them with risk management, tax planning strategies, and creating a plan for their financial security. She's got too many awards, trust me, for me to mention, but a couple that I will mention is that she has been named Maryland's Top 100 Women Circle of Excellence. She won the award in 2009, 2012, and 2015. She is also a recipient of the John Mack Leadership Award. She's the chair of Women in Business at the Center Club in Baltimore and is a founding member of the Society for Women in Investment Leadership. And I could go on and on, but I'm not, because there's a ton more awards and things that she's involved in. But let me tell you how Lori and I first met a while back, many years ago, when there was an organization in Baltimore called Executive Women's Network. And we met there. We both went on to be president of that organization for a year. Lori was my vice president, and I couldn't have done it without her. And we've been friends ever since. So, Lori, welcome.
Hi, it's good to be here. And I like to say that I started the business when I was 7, so that explains all the years.
Yes, and I'm
32 and stopped 18.
I like it.
So
I like it. I like
any
it.
other way.
I love it. That's perfect. Well, today we want to talk about financial management in general, but I want to talk about some really specific things. As you and I discussed before we came on, when you are a small business owner, so women in solo law practice, women in small law firms, you're an entrepreneur and you're a business owner in addition to being a lawyer. But your finances are two-sided because you have your personal finances, but that's completely separate from your business finances, or it should be. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about what you should have in place before you even jump off onto creating a solo business or a small business. So let's talk about that first, if we could, Lori. What would you say to somebody who says, you know what, I'm a lawyer, I've been practicing for a few years, I want to go out on my own, set up my own shop. On the financial side, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think that sometimes people have the confusion that where they're an awesome attorney and they're great at that, and they haven't thought about the fact that you have to really manage your personal financial house and your business financial house as well. And there are 3 hats that you have to sort of wear. And a lot of people enter the equation of being a business owner or a sole proprietor without making sure that their personal financial house is in order. And so it's sort of like a house of cards where that's the foundation for any success. And if you don't have your personal financial house in order, then I feel like every move that gets made after that can become a little dicey because everything is reliant on the fact that you are financially sound from your personal standpoint.
So let's talk about what that really means, because I think a lot of people have heard that term, get your financial house in order. Your personal financial house needs to be in order. But let's dig down on that a little bit more. What does that really mean? Should you have no debt at all? Which, personally is kind of tough for most people if they have a house or they have a car payment or.
Yeah, I mean, I think
what are you talking about there?
I mean, I think debt is often considered a four-letter word in a bad way. And there's a lot of good debt. I mean, I believe personally that if, for example, you have a mortgage and you have a low rate of a mortgage, you should, in a lot of instances, keep your mortgage for tax reasons, for reasons that you could use that cash for other purposes. You know, people have cars. I really think you need to look at um, where do your assets lie. So making sure that your assets are, you know, overall sound, making sure you have a reserve of, you know, I mean, the idea, we like to keep 3 to 6 months reserves for occasion, even if you don't own your own business. I think having 3 to 6 month reserves is a smart move, just to make sure that anything can happen in any of our lives, and to make sure that you can, while you're getting the business up and running, that you can take care of yourself and your family if that were to take place. So you do not have to get rid of all debt, and I do not encourage that, but to make sure that you're minimizing the debt, and then you're thinking about debt as one of the tools to increase your business, because there's some people that need to use debt to get a business up and running. Like you might use credit cards, and I think you just should enter in the equation, making sure that you're doing that for business purposes as opposed to personal purposes.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because you know you had mentioned credit cards also, and they certainly can have a place. But you know, I've talked to some lawyers who are mixing their personal charges with their business charges. They haven't set up a separate business account. So tell me, you know, what are the rules you should be following with your business as far as credit is concerned?
In my opinion, the more separation, the better. So I don't think you should ever come into play for using your personal cards, your personal assets in order to cross over for the business. The same is true for liability standpoint. I think that you should really put, you know, as attorneys, you know more about this than I do, but there's a risk when you put your personal side in your business. So I think number one is making sure that you are financially, you can pay your bills, you can do everything you need to do personally first. And then you can enter into a business, because you have to think about the fact that if you're an attorney for someone else, they're paying you a salary, which you can rely upon in order to pay all your personal bills. If you are having your own business and you need ramp up time and you don't have that salary to live off comfortably, then how can, unless you have some other source of income, you can't be, you know, you need that to be dependent on paying your bills. So if you have that stream of income coming in that you know it's consistent, or you have those assets saved from your personal side that can allow your business time to ramp up, because it's going to take time for, you know, for revenues to come in. You just need to make sure everything is completely separate.
And that raises a good point, because not only, you know, you have to be able to, you're right, pay your personal expenses and not count on the money from the business to be able to do that, because it does take time to ramp up. And you know, sometimes I'll hear from lawyers, they say, well, you know, I get that, but I'm planning, you know, I'm in a practice now, but I have clients that I'm pretty sure are going to come with me. I will take business with me. And so it will just sort of continue to roll the way it has. And then they're very surprised when, you know, once you open the business, you realize there are a lot more expenses than perhaps you had planned on, that go along with running a business. And, you know, maybe not all of those clients that you felt confident were going to come with you decide to come with you. They may decide to stay with your old firm. And so, you know, in the world of lawyers, it's up to the client. And if the client says, you know, best of luck, but no, I'm going to stay with Smith and Jones, I'm not going to come with you, then that's the client's absolute choice. So it's great if you think you can bring a book of business with you, but you can't count 100% on that happening. And so one of the things that I see also is, and I'd like to talk to you about, is this idea of, you know, when you're the business owner, you have personal financial desires and you have desires for your business, but those two may not always mesh. So when you have the business and you have profits, if you're solely looking at the business, that then is the time perhaps to reinvest in your business, invest heavily, maybe if you need more technology or, in the needs of the business, versus your personal desire of, I'd like to take all that profit in the form of my bonus at the end of the year. How, as a financial advisor, what advice can you give to people as they're looking at those numbers saying, on the one hand, ooh, on my personal side, I'd really like to take all that money, versus on the business side, well, maybe that's not the best way to go?
I think one of the biggest pitfalls that any business owner falls into is that they don't have a successful business plan. And if you have it mapped out ahead of time of where you want your business to go, where you want your revenues to go, and you could back it up with activities, then I think that can, and then you can auto correct for that plan, because as we know, it doesn't always work out the way you want. And so if you have and I think that having a good accountant is, or someone that deals with your, or if you're very well versed in that, it's fine. I think personally, I would have separate people that do my business, or, some kind of bookkeeper or accountant that can help me plan my P&L, help me plan all of my numbers. But I think that there's a complete, that's one of the biggest problems. There's a disconnect between business money and personal money. And when you have personal money and you have a salary and your bills are paid and you have savings, and you can be like, I'm going shopping, you can say, I can do this. But with a business, you have to be so much more forward thinking about what's due for next year, and you're planning, strategies, that you can't just be as impulsive as saying, okay, I'm going to take this money and run with it. I mean, you have to put often years of time to build the business before you really see the revenues come out to you personally.
And it's not a situation where, although I know that there are people that run their businesses this way, where you say, okay, we need, technology is what comes to mind. We need to upgrade X about our technology. How much money do we have in the bank? We have enough? Okay, let's do it. And the thinking is always very, very short term. What's here and now, as opposed to, oh, but what's coming up in the way of other needs that we have as a business? And is this the smartest thing to do right now? So how do you go about, mapping that out? What would you recommend to somebody that's coming to you saying, well, I got the personal side, I got the business side. How do I plan all this?
I mean, my first idea is to go through the personal side first and make sure that they have all the boxes checked there, from, their idea that they have a plan in place so that they can make sure that they can have short-term issues dealt with, that they do the income stream, that they have assets saved up for them personally. And then I would have them enter a business plan of where you want to go with the business. Where do you see revenues? Where do you see your revenue streams come from? And then I really think that people really need to work through that plan on a regular basis to make sure that they're taking care of all the things that need to be taken care of. And you mentioned such a great point, because I think in the very beginning, you're just worried about surviving in a business. Yeah. And then you have to think about thriving in a business. So you have to think beyond that. So where do you really want to make investments, whether it's in networking opportunities or technology or new accreditations or into whatever kind of expenses that your business might see. And you have to really see which of those are more important to take care of first before you can start to take more revenue. And it's really a complicated issue, because after a certain point, people want to get paid. I mean, that's the whole reason you went into business, was to get paid. So making sure you're compensating yourself enough to survive, but also making sure that your business goes beyond just survival and thriving. And you really need to talk to maybe business coaches or other attorneys to find out what helped them get to that point of survival to thriving in business.
Yeah, and I like what you talked about in terms of investments in networking opportunities, because there's a cost that's associated with that that frequently you don't think about if you're working for someone else and they're paying those bills for you. So, for lawyers, frequently your firm will pay for your state bar association dues, or dues for specialty bar associations that you belong to. They may well pay for any networking dinners that you go to for those groups and any other groups you belong to. The firm may be paying for sponsorships at many of those events, and you don't even realize that, but that's one way that they're getting their name out, and they're getting opportunities to, be recognized at an event, things like that. And you may not, as an employee of the firm, have any idea what the costs are that are associated with that. And it's very timely, because I just today received an email from a bar association that I belong to that has an event coming up and has sponsorship opportunities. And so what I needed to do for my business was sit down and look at what's the value of this group in terms of the business, not in terms of me personally, but in terms of my business. Is there a sponsorship level that makes sense for me where I am now in my Bold Women Lawyers business that will be beneficial to the business? And it turned out that there was, and that's great, but it's not, by no means is it at the highest level of sponsorship, because that just doesn't make sense for my business where it is right now, and the type of business that it is. So there's a lot of things that you have to consider, and it's not just law-related networking opportunities.
And I think that in the business planning, that pushes people so out of their comfort zone, because if you went to school to be an attorney, you necessarily didn't take a lot of business classes. But when you're thinking about a business plan, it's got to go so far beyond just where your revenue streams come in. It has to be in marking out how much money a year do you think you should put towards marketing. And marketing can encompass all of those things. And then within that budget, you have to think reasonably, well, I have this pot of money during the year. Where do I really want to, where is the best use of my dollars? Is it in some kind of advertising? Is it some kind of networking? Where can I make sure that I can make this marketing budget work within my budget? And think of things. And as business gets stronger, so do the piles, the different pockets that you invest in. So you can say, okay, I can now redo all of my technology, or I can bring on another person and, maybe an assistant or a paralegal, or I can put more money into marketing my business, because I found that was the best streams of getting new clients. I mean, and these are all things that this is why owning your business, it can take time, because you really have to work on your business at times, and how much are you prepared to work on these aspects in addition to your full-time job of being an attorney.
Exactly. And when you make those investments, say in marketing, you need time to evaluate it and figure out, well, what was my return on that investment? I spent $1,000 to go to X event, or to sponsor X event, or to be one of many sponsors. Now, did I get one client? How much was that one client worth? Did I get 5 clients? If I spent $1,000 and in return I got 5 clients who each had a value to my business of $5,000, that's easy, and that's a case where I may go up to the next level then, the next time that event comes around. But too often I see, entrepreneurs, lawyers, who will just kind of throw money at things and never step back to say, okay, was that worth it? Did I get any business from it? Did I get any additional opportunities that led to business? Or was it kind of a thing that felt good and I was happy to support it, but from a business point of view, it's really not not something that's generating more business for me. So I may support that group personally, but from a business point of view, I need to move on.
Yeah, I think at least annually, if not more
Mhm.
frequently, you should look at really the last year, let's say, and really look at where do your clients come from? I mean, where are they coming from? Are they coming from centers of influence that you've met? And are they all coming from two or three people? And then that's people that you need to make sure. Are they coming from a wide source? And do you need to widen that stream of centers of influence? I mean, I think that centers of influence are often a forgotten area that people don't think about. And it's often where people get a lot of their business, because if you're making connections with whomever it is, whether it be, it could be, depending on your type of law, it could come from a wide group of people. But if you're finding that a few people are referring you a great deal of your clients, then you need to think about ways to work with those people more, because they must be raving fans of your business.
Mm. Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. And you mentioned working on your business rather than in your business. And we've all heard that. And, we all have some understanding of it to a degree. But in fact, you make a very good point, because when you're so busy, actually for lawyers, you're actually doing the legal work that's working in your business, whatever your legal work is for you. But it's the time that you have to take to step back and to evaluate the finances, to evaluate your marketing, to evaluate all aspects of the business. That is the time that's working on your business that so frequently is the first thing that you sacrifice when you're a business owner. And it's really the last thing that you should sacrifice, because it's what's going to keep you moving forward. So I know you work on tax planning strategies too. And from a business point of view, what are the things that people should be considering when they're thinking about the taxes, related to their business?
This is why I really, really believe that everybody should work. This is just me, that they should work with an accountant or someone, have a resource, because I think there's so many deductions that you can take or not take. In the last few years, they've taken so many deductions away from business owners. And I think that there's so many things you can do strategically for your business that are all within the, you want to make sure that, number one, you're doing things that are all from a legal standpoint
that are legal, sure.
And protect yourself. But there's things that people might say, oh, you should do this, it's fine. And then you get involved in the situation. So you want to make sure that any deductions, anything you do is certainly, within the confines of the law, and just making sure that you're encouraging strategies, and you get some real business savings by being a business owner. So just making sure you're taking advantage of all of those business savings. I think that as soon as you have the ability to, creating a retirement plan for your business is really important, because that's money that it goes to you, but it's not taxable income that comes to your income. And you are no longer having a 401k to support your retirement. So one of the things that's so important is that people are like, well, I want to get paid. And I'm like, you have to make sure you're taking care of yourself immediately, but you really have to think of yourself in the future. As another goal, you have to make sure that is not getting constantly overlooked.
And that's hard. I mean, that's hard in a small business, particularly in the beginning. It is hard, but that's a great point, because you do need, it's not just you today, it's you, where are you 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now? And what have you done to protect yourself that far down the road, right?
Well, and I have found that if people make $50,000 a year or $500,000 a year, they honestly have no idea how much they spend. I can say to people all the time, okay, let's talk about planning. Let's talk about how much money you make. And everyone's pretty clear on how much money they make before and after taxes. And then I say to them, okay, in the planning ideas, how much money do you spend? And I get this like deer in the headlights looking. And I very rarely met, I have like 2 clients that have maybe spreadsheets of everything they spend money on. But
yes.
Because it forces you personally, at least to start, to take a long, hard look at where your money's going. and then be realistic about, are you okay with that? And I think that's true of a business too. Like when you're
Mhm.
looking at if you're throwing money on ads and you're throwing money on things and you're not really checking to make sure that they're useful to your business, and you have to give them time to pan out. I understand that, but if you're
Sure.
not getting
Yeah.
any kind of, um, it just sort of happened and there was zero positive events from it, then I think that you really need to evaluate that. So people really need to look at where they're spending money personally and where they're spending money business wise to make
Yeah.
sure that it's all prudent spending, and then just
Yeah.
autocorrect for the future.
Yeah. No, I think the hardest part is the part about actually looking at it and being honest about it. And it really is, whether it's creating a budget based on your past spend and
Mhm.
evaluating that, or, if you don't have that because you just started the business, you really need to look at what do you think is realistic, and then 6 months down the road look again, and then a year down the road look at it and say, yeah, this part of the plan worked great, but this
Mhm.
part was just turned out to be sort of a waste of money, and I learned a lesson, and that's good. But I'm not going to keep going down that road.
Right.
And I see it a lot in marketing, spend, because you just want to throw money at it. Please, here, do your ads, do whatever you tell me you're going to do. Just do it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to really learn this. And, you know, just send me cases send me
Right.
clients, without really looking closely at, is this working? Am I getting am I getting a good bang for the buck? Because if I'm not, well, let me stop sending you money and let me rethink this and figure out a better way to achieve the end that I need, which is, getting more clients.
What?
If that's the issue. Yeah.
And I think that once you're not in the infancy of your business, I think people have to look long and hard and say, okay, sort of, a coach one told me to look at everything I do in 2 weeks, everything I do, and sort of write it
Mhm.
down. And then you look at the things that you are not good at, that bring you no joy, that are not serving you at all. You think about your hourly rate as an attorney. You say, okay,
Mhm.
for me, there was an example where I was licking envelopes for a seminar because I didn't want to give it to anybody else, because I was like, well, and I felt like that was, I didn't want to give it to my intern. I didn't want, and she was
Right.
like, this is not a good use of
Crazy.
your time and
Yeah.
space. So if you look at everything you do, you can then say, once you're in the business, what is it worth for these things to give to
Right.
somebody else, to maybe pay somebody, whether it be in a consulting basis or hiring some basis that can do that,
Mhm.
whether it's maybe it's your social media, or maybe it's your administrative capabilities, or maybe it's your technology, or maybe it's your paralegal, whatever it is, and just sort of keep track of all the things that you're spending all of your time on that are sort of, taking you away from being productive. And then eventually look at where can you find assistance in those spaces to make you that much more productive and take on that much more work from that point of view.
E- exactly. And that you've touched on a very important point, because it is your baby. There's things you don't want to let go of, but then I often hear, oh, but I can't afford to hire somebody else to do it. But in fact, like when you hire someone, if they're a full-time or a part-time employee, whatever their yearly salary is going to be, you don't pay that on day one,
Right.
number one. And secondly, you need to look at, if I hire a part-time assistant and here's her specific duties or his specific duties, how much time does that free up for me? And what am I going to do with that time to grow this business? And so if I can free up 10 hours a week, that gives me 10 hours a week, say, to be in business building activities, networking, meeting, people who can be referral sources, et cetera. That's a good way to spend that extra time. If I'm just going to say, oh, well, that just gives me 10 hours a week to sleep in, then that's not a great decision. But you need to be intentional, about what am I going to do with this extra time? Let's plan that out. Because as we all know, it's kind of easy to just fritter your time away scrolling through social media for whatever that does to our brains. And I'm not even sure, but but it doesn't do much for promoting your business if you're just scrolling through. So,
Yeah, I think you hit on such like a good point, is that I think that one of the differences is a successful business and a not, is that intentional, like being intentional in your business and recognizing the fact that you often have to push yourself beyond your comfort zone of what you want to do. Like sometimes people wouldn't take on somebody else because that would push them out of the comfort zone of what would happen if I, then didn't, succeed. So sometimes if you allow yourself to be freed up with intentionality, and you can say, now this will let me go to that next level personally and allow me to do those things that bring me joy and that I'm really good at, then that's the difference sometimes of just, like I said, striving and thriving. Because when you get caught up in the minutia of the details of and you're just stuck in there, then you're not productive at all from the other side.
You're not. And the only way you can break out of that, as you said, is you get help to do the things that you really don't need to be doing. It's not, you can't do them. I can lick envelopes. You can lick envelopes. That's not the issue.
Right. I mean, I understand in the beginning that you have to lick envelopes. I mean, we all have to do things at the beginning, but there's a point where you're like, this, I'm now taking time away from like being a productive attorney, and now I'm not able to take on new clients because I'm stuck in this sort of, mud of not being able to get on my own way. And sometimes once you get a little bit of success, then you can look really effectively at where you can use some assistance. And maybe it isn't in the administrative, maybe it's more in the marketing or in the, connecting or any of those areas where you feel like you could use, someone else could be a better suited than you could, is where you have to look at those areas.
Exactly. You mentioned something. I may put together a little panel and have you come back with some other people, and we'll talk about this whole issue of, but what's underlying your unwillingness to give up some of those duties? Well, if I give it up and that gives me more time to try to grow my business, what if I'm not successful? That whole mindset. That really, really can be a problem, I think, for a lot of people. So, all right. Whoops.
Okay, I got
you there?
A little way late there for a second.
That's okay. It happens. It's the internet.
I can't see you, but I can hear you. So that's
okay. Good. That's all right. As long as you can hear me. Yeah. So anyhow, as I said, I think I'd like to put together a panel and just to talk about the issue of, but if I give up this stuff, stuff like licking envelopes and putting promotions together and that kind of thing, and that's going to free up some time. But what if I'm not successful? So, Lori, we lost you, and I am sorry about that, but I really, really, really appreciated you coming. And for those of you who are listening, if you want to get in touch with Lori, I've put her email up, lori.villegas@morganstanley.com. And, she's back. Okay.
I'm so sorry. Go. This is never.
Oh, don't worry about it.
I can say it's never technology. Before, but it's never happened before.
Okay. Nah, it's fine.
But panel, I think it'll be good, because I think women do, by our very nature, we do get in our own way of our own successes. And I think we make excuses for why we don't realize we're doing it, but we make excuses why we can't succeed or don't succeed, when if we sometimes acted more like men and just, threw caution to the wind and did those things.
Of course I'm going to succeed, and have that mindset and that, well, of course I'm going to succeed.
They did a study of young boys and young girls in a classroom, and they asked a question, and they looked at it was something like 84% of the boys raised their hand before they even knew the answer. And that's why when the teachers would call on them, they would say like, where the little girls would sit there and think about it, make sure they had the right answer and make sure it was framed properly. And the boys just threw their hands up and just were going to, and sometimes I don't want to say you should completely just, throw your hands up without the answer, but sometimes you do have the answer and you don't want to, acknowledge that.
Yes. Agreed. All right. Well, we'll come back and talk about all
For
those
another day.
issues
Mhm.
another day. But thank you, Lori. I put your email up there for anybody who would like to talk to you more, has questions, or wants to get in touch with you. And for those of you who have not yet done this, at my website, boldwomenlawyers.com, make sure you go and download my solos and small firm success guide. There's lots of business tips in there that will help you grow successfully your solo and small law practice. So I thank you all for listening. Lori, thank you so much for coming. And we will have another discussion on another day. All right.
Thank you for having me. It was great being here.
All right. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.